welcome to The Actor and the Engineer. My name is Paul James. I am the actor.
And my name's Josh Knapp. I'm the broadcast engineer.
Okay, in my defense, since people don't know what we're talking about, we'll just leave it at that. I couldn't see because of my glasses. We used to have a countdown, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and then I would start the introduction. Now we don't have a countdown. It just kind of goes blank, and then it starts, and it's like this split second of unnerving feeling of, is it ready? Is it not ready? And I jumped the gun tonight. Anyway, not important.
Yes. Well, what is important is that we're talking about Marty Scorsese's new movie, Killers of the Flower Moon. And, you know, much like another one of his movies, you were an Irishman for a little while.
I was. Yeah. Yeah.
How was it? Was it good?
It was amazing. Yeah. What we're talking about is I took a trip to Ireland, my first time out of the country, first time in a different country, obviously. And I decided to go to Ireland for all of the reasons that everybody possibly would think that I would go. That and the fact that, you know, I wanted to go somewhere outside the United States. I've been traveling a lot to different states. And, you know, I was like, I'll go to Canada. Technically speaking, that's a different country, but it's still like not traveling across the Atlantic Ocean, which is what I did. Yeah. And the only reason why that is relevant to the podcast, and thank you for asking and thank you for bringing it up, is during my stay, I had this itinerary and I did everything on my list. I went to every place I wanted to go to. It was amazing. And it was amazing. And the second night before I left, I was like, well, why don't I just do things I would do in the United States? Meaning like on a Friday night, I'd go to the movies or I'd go to the theater. So I did go to the theater and I saw a Martin McDonagh play.
Wow.
Yeah.
Jeez.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
In this really old theater that had 3 balconies and I was all the way up in the corner in P1 and I assumed they named it after me, Paul 1. And the play was great. And I was worried about the dialect and I was worried about understanding it, but it wasn't. It was a fantastic experience at the theater. And it's this really old theater. Ireland's really old and new. You can tell it's been around for thousands of years, but they're trying to modernize it. So real quick, down by the docks, the canal, they've modernized a lot of the condos, but what they've done is they've taken those old traditional Irish row houses and they haven't knocked those down. They've made those the entrances to the new condos. So the gyms and the coffee houses and all that are in these old row houses and the structure is still what it would look like 40 years ago, but you go into a modern day building.
So it's like a facade, yeah. And then the back end of it is all new.
Yeah, but they're using the facade. The building is actually being used. Yeah, it was pretty cool. And then on Friday night, my last night there, it rained and it was cold. And I was good with the rain and I was good with the cold. But together, I was like, But I still got everything I needed to get done during the day. And I was like, I'm going to go to the movies because I want to see what a movie theater in Dublin, Ireland looks like. And I'm so glad that I went. First of all, I saw Foe, which is the book that I read after we talked about I'm Thinking About Ending Things, written by the same writer, Ian Reid, I'm never sure. And I was like, oh, cool. And it's starring Paul Mescal, I'm hearing Paul Mescal. Wait, what did I hear? Paul.
I don't know.
We're saying Mescal, but I've heard something different. Anyway, Paul Mescal and Saoirse Ronan, Irishman. And I was like, I gotta go. So real quick on that, just a couple of minutes on that.
Didn't they have American accents in it though?
They did. They did.
Oh, jeez.
And they did. And
Weird.
They did a really good job. And it's an interesting book. And it was sort of like a palate cleanser from I'm Thinking About Ending Things because we saw that, talked about it, and I read the book. And then I was like, well, what's the deal with this book? And I read it and I was fascinated by this book, Foe. And so anyway, back to the theater experience. So the theater outside is very cool. It's on this promenade, very cool, very old, very cool. First, you notice that the movie posters are 25 by 25. They're squares. They're small, comparatively speaking to the large lit up ones in America. Then everything is really old but new looking. And I just realized the other day, kind of going through the trip and going through the pictures, nothing smelled old. Nothing smelled ancient, right? You know, when you go into an old vaudeville house.
Musty?
Yeah. Nothing. Nothing.
All right.
Yeah, luck of the Irish, I guess. Anyway, so the long and the short of that is that I went over to the to get a drink and some popcorn, no ice, cold soda,
Yeesh.
but no ice, which
Yeah.
didn't bother me. That was fine. It stops me from chewing it, which is bad for you anyway. And then only salted butter. Oh, I'm sorry, salted popcorn, no butter.
Interesting.
I want to make a general statement, but I don't want to be mean to my country. But Americans would hate it because, first of
Yeah.
all, no ice, no butter, right? And everything is
Yeah.
like the sizes they used to be. Small, medium, and large are small, medium, and large. And so a medium soda is a reasonable amount of soda, right? And then the worst, the piece de resistance, there were three flights of stairs to get to the movie theater. And that's not including the two flights in between connecting the flights to the theater. And they were 11 or 16, 5, 11, 5, and then another 11 just to get to the movie theater. And I thought Americans would hate this because
where's the elevator?
We walk in, we pump that butter, and then we go to our seats, and it's not like that. And the theater was smaller, but yet not so small. It wasn't. It didn't look like a screening room. It looked like a theater, and the projection was great. The sound was great. Very modernized sound. The surround sound all worked, and it was a fantastic experience. The movie's really interesting. I recommend it, but I recommend it more about the performances than the movie itself. I'd be interested to hear what you'd have to say about it, because I'd be interested to see what you take from it and what you are picking up as it's going along, because I read the book. So like I'm in on it.
So you had a preconceived notion. Yeah.
Right.
Well, I mean, that's so cool. I'm glad you got to see a movie while you were there and get a different experience, because you're right. I mean, even if you go to a movie theater in the United States, it's going to be very similar, especially if you go to like a multiplex type thing, a 24 screen theater or something. It's like, they're all going to be pretty much cookie cutter, but that's really neat that you got to kind of experience a different thing. So that's so cool.
The interesting part was that for a split second, I was like, am I wasting my time going to a movie? That statement can't even really fully come out of my mouth truthfully.
Yeah.
Oh, by the way, no trailers, immediate start of movie. Nothing.
I love it. I love it.
Nothing. I mean, for a split second, I was like, wait, what? I was unnerved by it because I thought I had another 20 minutes, but I didn't.
But see, for me, that's selfish on my part, because I already see all the trailers. I just saw the Maestro trailer that came out today.
I did too.
Which is, whew. I was not expecting that. Man, he's really taken a big bite. So we'll see how it goes. But yeah, I know.
I'm on his side, but there are instinctual things going through my head. But that shot at him sitting on the chair with the pillow in his face. Do you remember that shot?
Oh yeah.
I was like, Bradley's doing it again. Dude. Yes. I'm glad for him, but
it's Carey Mulligan though. So I'm here.
I'm fine.
I'm here for that.
Yeah.
But yeah. So but I think for me, I already see every trailer I want to see, I will have already seen it before I showed up at a movie theater. So it doesn't really do me much good to see trailers at the movie theater. So I'm fine with just starting, but I understand that most other people are not going to be in the same, jumping on YouTube every day to see if there's a new trailer, type of a thing. So I get it.
Well, it's about balance for me. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
What were you going to say?
Oh, it's nice to see trailers in the theater though, too. Like the Killer trailer, the David Fincher Killer trailer plays totally different in the theater than it does on your phone, for example. So, and Killers of the Flower Moon trailer, same thing. It is a spectacle. The trailer is a spectacle in the movie theater. So yeah, those I understand. But as far as getting information or do I want to care about this movie or not? I've already determined that, but before I get to the movie theater. But
once you get to 5 decades rotating around the sun, you realize that things are about balance, and that when things are off balance, the excitement of traveling overnight, 6 hours, not getting any sleep, then jet lag. Maybe that's what caused me to not feel good 3 or 4 days later. Went to the Cliffs of Moher. It was rainy and wet and windy the whole time, and I was wet the whole entire time. Maybe that's why I did. So it's about balance. So I was like, okay, I brought the coat. I have the inner part. I have the outer part. I'll wear the outer part outside. I will, so it's about balance. So my point to that is that I don't have a problem with trailers. And I don't have a problem with no trailers. I kind of like seeing the trailers. I am a trailer guy. But when I went to see this movie, Flowers of the Killer Moon, the movie, I can't remember what time I saw it. Let's say it started at
Killers of the Flower Moon.
What'd I say?
Flowers of the Killer Moon.
Damn it. I knew I was going to get it wrong. Killers.
It's okay. We got it. We're past it.
Killers of the Flower Moon.
It,
I said Flowers of the Killer Moon. Wow.
That's right. It's okay. That's a different movie.
Yeah, but it's a pretty good title, though. Anyway, it is. Killers of the Flower Moon. I told you I was going to do that. Anyway, So when I went to see this movie, I can't remember what time it started. Let's say it started at 1:30. First of all, it started at 1:40, 10 minutes late after all of the local commercials, like the Pepsi commercials and stuff like that. And then the movie did not start until 10 after 2. So 30 some odd minutes later after all the trailers. That's not balance. No trailers, 1 or 2 is fine. Something that the people who are going to see Killers of the Flower Moon or Foe or what is it, The Killer? What's the new David?
The Killer,
yeah. Something relating to that type of film is how it used to be. And you'd see 2 or 3 in, out, unless it was like a big blockbuster, Raiders, Jaws, something like that. That's what you would see in trailers. And then boom, in. So a little bit of balance would be good in between the two ideas of trailers or no trailers. Anyway, yeah.
Well, yeah. So, I mean, I guess you read Foe and then saw it. I read the David Grann novel, Killers of the Flower Moon, and then saw this movie.
Wow.
Whereas, I read it a while ago, like a year ago or something. But basically, when I, started learning about like what, that this was Martin Scorsese's new film. So I was like, okay. And then, I read the book, and I'd like to get your take on it. So first of all, it's set in the 1920s, based on a true story. People of the Osage Nation start getting murdered for their head rights because they've got a lot of oil money, and the head rights transfer over to people who are married to them and things like that. So this particular story centers on one family where multiple women are getting murdered in this family, and Leonardo DiCaprio ends up marrying one of the women, played by Lily Gladstone, who crushed it. And so, but yeah, so that's kind of the basis of the movie. Robert De Niro is kind of like the puppet master in a lot of it, plays the uncle of Leonardo DiCaprio's character. But yeah, I want to get your take on the movie itself, because the book is laid out a lot different than the movie. And I was expecting one thing, but once I found out that Leonardo DiCaprio was playing this particular character, the Ernest Burkhart character, I knew that they were going to go a different direction with it. But just in general, I liked it. I thought it was entertaining and gripping, and it kept me engaged for 3.5 hours, which is hard to do in some cases. But what did you think?
I agree with everything that you said. I would piggyback on the 3.5 hours being engaged in a purposely, some people might call it slow, and I would say it was slow paced too, but not in a bad way. Purposely paced is a better term for me. Yeah. The pace needed to happen the way that it happened. It could not have happened any other way. I have nothing bad to say about this movie. I think it's a masterpiece. I think it's one of the best of the year. It could be my favorite movie of the year. Not sure yet. Watch out, Christopher Nolan. Martin Scorsese's coming for his second Oscar, and he will deserve it. Leo will be nominated again. Robert De Niro will be nominated again, and
he better be.
Yeah,
Robert De Niro better be nominated.
Well, I'm going to go back on this in just a second. I'm going to go through this, and then I'm going to go back. And Lily Gladstone is the movie. Her performance is stunning. Side note: when X, Twitter, and all the nominations and all the people talking about award season, they were talking about her, and they were talking about how she's going to campaign in Best Supporting Actress. That was the assumption. Now, I don't know if that's just something that was started on Twitter between people like us, or if people just got it in their mind she would be supporting. I don't know what they did, how it started, but they were talking about her being a supporting actress category, in the supporting actress category. And she came out, her people and her came out and said they're going to campaign for her for Best Actress. And everybody applauded her and said, way to stand up for yourself, way to let what you've done not be demeaned by having category fraud, by you being in this category and not the other category, blah, 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 blah. And the only reason why I bring this up is I cannot understand for a split second how anybody could not think she was the lead actress in the film. Yeah. First of all, the film cannot be done without her. It cannot be. Sure, she could have been a side character that they talked about through the film, but without her performance, the movie would not work as well as it does. And I don't like to look at my phone, but I was curious about something. So she disappeared at one point because the narrative was going somewhere else. And so I just happened to look at my phone really quick. And then when she came back, it was less than 15 minutes later, if that long. And I thought, she's been on screen the whole entire time. And whenever she's disappeared, she comes right back 10 minutes, not even longer. Same with Robert De Niro. He's actually more of a lead than he is a supporting character, but you could probably do the movie without him technically. Leo, of course, is Leo. He is the lead actor in the film. But the point to all of that is, regardless of screen time, Lily Gladstone's performance is astonishing. It is the best performance I've seen so far this year. That might change. And I believe she will be nominated, and I believe she will be the front runner. And if and when she wins, she will deserve it, because the performance is quiet and subtle. And then the moments that she has, I was like, her deep breathing cry scenes are devastating. I was like, I don't want to cry today. I don't have the energy to cry today. And that basement scene, dude, she's breathtaking. So I didn't know where you wanted to begin with that. I felt strongly about saying something about her being Best Actress. I can't fathom why anybody would think anything different.
Yeah, I mean, and I think that as far as her performance is concerned, you're right. I mean, it's integral to the plot, but also, like, it's the hardest part. In my opinion, it's the hardest part, because the whole time you're kind of looking at the first blush of the character is like, why is she with Burkhart? Like, why is she with Leonardo DiCaprio's character? Like, especially when, we're not giving too much away, but he wants her head rights. He needs her to not be there for him to get her money, for himself. So he's, moving forward with a plan to kill her, essentially. But then why does she choose, why does she still, like, there is still this love between them, like the confusing part, and especially nowadays, people are like, why would somebody stay with somebody who's trying to poison them or whatever, or like, why would he, even with the Leonardo DiCaprio character, like, why would he be able to, like, have both of these truths in his brain at the same time? I want this woman's money, but I love her. Like, if I loved her, why would I be doing that to her? Or, if I, didn't love her, why would I care so much about, how she's feeling day to day? And, why would I spend all this time with her? So it's a lot of stuff to, like, fit in. And so the needle that Scorsese has a thread is, he has to give us enough time with them to determine, what their feelings are towards each other, but then also flesh out the rest of the story and keep the De Niro character as, as all over top of all of this stuff. And then also, hit the beats of the story too, because there's a lot of stuff that's going on. She has multiple sisters and they get murdered. I mean, there's a lot going on. It's not all great. None of it's great, actually. And so we've got to get through all that. But then at the same time, we've got to have that cohesive, this cohesive bond between the two main characters. So, and I think that they did a good job. That was when you were talking about how it being people talking about it being slow, but you said that it was deliberately paced. For me, it seemed like it was kind of like one of those roller coasters where, it kind of goes up a little bit and then down a little bit and then up a little bit and then down a little bit. And you're constantly, you feel like you could just keep going forever because like the amount of energy it takes you to get up to the top of the next hill, it pushes you down, and then that you still have enough energy to get up to the top of the next one. It never felt like it lagged, extremely at any point of the movie. But then at the same time, it wasn't, there weren't a lot of like whiz bang things going on, even though there was a lot of CGI in this movie that was very well done and very light touch. And there was just visual effects, but then on top of it, like a lot of practical sets too, that just, the more practical sets you have when CGI is used, it kind of melts in. If it's done well, it kind of melts into the background, and it's not like this whole area isn't here. This house doesn't even exist. There's a door, and then they build it out in CGI. No, they were building houses for this movie. It's partially why it cost $200 and something million.
Worth it. Worth it. Money well spent.
I gave you my three word review. It was solid, opulent Scorsese, and I mean it's opulent considering, and it's considering, yes, how much money he spent, but then also like the fact that he wasn't going to, like, they weren't going to cheap out. They were going to go to Atlanta and shoot this movie. Like, they went to Pawhuska, which is in the Osage Nation, and built out their Fairfax town, a portion of their, Fairfax town, renovated certain buildings within the downtown of Fairfax, of Pawhuska, to make it look like Fairfax of the time. They built that house, like her house, Molly's house. I mean, it's serious, and they didn't pull any punches. So I was kind of amazed that it looked as good as it did. But then once I found out it was like $200 million, I was like, well, dang, it should have. But they're not going to give this much money to anybody anymore, probably. I don't know. This may be the highest budgeted movie for a very long time. I don't know if Scorsese's going to get $200 million for his next movie. And I don't see, I mean, maybe Christopher Nolan maybe could get this much money.
Well, maybe that's why Scorsese brought up all that beef he has with Marvel, or not beef, but why he thinks that that's not true cinema. Maybe that's his way of, on some kind of subliminal, I'm not sure. I believe that he would manipulate it, but I don't know him, and I don't know how the business works, and it's show business. So I don't know how that works. I don't know how somebody in 2023 gets 200 million for a picture, either because he's Scorsese or because they're like, oh, well, Scorsese's complaining about the Marvel movies. Not complaining. He brought up an issue. This is how he saw it. Yeah. Because I don't want him to be prejudiced one way or another because he has a different opinion than the rest of the world or billions of other people. But so maybe on some level they're like, well, we'll give Scorsese the 200 million that he wants, because let's see him make a movie that can pull in as much money as Marvel, because it is about money. It is about that, but it is about a craft. And side note, as for going to Atlanta and doing it in a studio and blah, 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 I know this is a strange comparison, but I always pull things back to our world or my world. And you build a new set for every play that you do. It's not like you go and use, now sometimes they build two sets that are similar, or they build one set that they can use twice, right? And they work out their season around that. So that makes sense, but that's just an economic thing. But if you need a certain kind of set, you just don't go to somebody else's set and go, okay, we're going to do the play here. We build our own set. So if that's what they need to make this movie look realistic, then so be it.
Yeah, I mean, I think that Apple saved his bacon because it was getting really expensive, and Paramount bailed on it, and they said, we're not going to give you the amount of money you need to finish this movie in the way that you want to do it. And so he shopped it around, and he'd already worked with Netflix for The Irishman, and they gave him $200 million. So Apple came in and gave him, I don't know how much of the budget they gave him, but I would think all of it. And that's because Apple wants to have a prestigious, I mean, they already had Coda, right? That won the Best Picture, but
they didn't know that at the time.
Exactly, but they want to have a prestigious film on their docket for the year. They want to give people a reason to pay the whatever it is, $10 a month for Apple TV Plus to be able to see Killers of the Flower Moon streaming, because that's the only place it's going to be. So that's it's not going to be on Netflix. It's not going to be on Amazon Prime. So that's why they spent the money, and they've got the money. They've got a bunch of cash just laying around. That's what the tech companies are. So it seems like it's good for everybody. The cool part about it is that they still worked with Paramount to do a wide release. I think I saw it was 3,500 screens. The Irishman didn't come out to 35. It didn't come out to 300 screens. I mean, it was minimal. I didn't see it in the theater. I don't even know if maybe one or two theaters in the Raleigh area played it. I don't know, but it was minimal. So this is a wide release, full on in the theaters for a prolonged period of time. I think it's already made like $25 million in opening weekend domestic. So it's not going to make its money back, but I don't think that was the focus. I think that being able to see it in the theater was Scorsese's focus, I think.
Well, not to digress even further into some financial technical stuff, not that I mind, but I want to get back to what we were talking about, their relationship. I'm going to circle back to that. But what's curious to me is, how did Oppenheimer do so well, and this is not pulling them in like Oppenheimer it did? What was it about Oppenheimer? And we don't have to have a discussion about it because we can talk about it after Oscar season. But what was it? And you know, it's just a question. It doesn't need to be answered. I'm fascinated that people were all about seeing that one in the theater, and that one was long.
It was long.
It was long. It's long. And
that one did have lulls, actually. That movie did have dips, like extreme dips, and then it would come back up.
Roller coaster. Roller coaster. Yeah. Anyway, well, we don't have to go there. So let's circle back really quick, because I want to talk about, tap into what you were talking about earlier. When I was talking about Lily Gladstone being the film, if and when she's nominated, she does what she needed to do. And Leo, interestingly enough, he is a really bad person. He's a horrible human being. Horrible, but for whatever reason, even at the end of the film, I felt sympathy towards him. And maybe that's some kind of like psychological like thing woven into my DNA, that the male antagonist in the film I will have some kind of sympathy for, because it's Leonardo DiCaprio and he's the lead and he's actually loving and sweet at one point, blah, blah, blah. But when you add it all up, he's a terrible, horrible human being. And Robert De Niro deserves an Oscar nomination. And for that, Leo deserves the Oscar nomination for pulling sympathy from us and still keeping us somewhere on his side, strangely enough. Now, I wouldn't want to communicate with that guy. I wouldn't want to have dinner with him. But Leo did that. So that's the Oscar nomination. And the reason in my head I can see him getting his umpteenth Oscar nomination. Robert De Niro, on the other hand, does exactly that. But he does it in such a cunning way that at first you're not really sure. At first, he's so convincing when he's telling Leo in the beginning of the film, well, you know, you have to marry her because then you have to get her head rights and all this other stuff. You have to marry her. And played by anybody else, any other way, you would immediately go, I do not like that guy. Like when you would have a family reunion, that's the uncle that would be in one room and you would never go into that room because he's just, something about him is not right. But somehow, even at the end of the film, when De Niro stands up, when something tragic happens to Molly and what's Leo's character's name again? Ernest. Something tragic happens and Ernest is in jail, and William Hale, Robert De Niro's character's in a cell next to him. And when he stands up and goes, what's happened? What happened? What happened? Oh, he's with the whole sympathetic, what's, you know, helping him through this moment. And you're like, oh, that's really nice. That's really sweet. Then you realize this guy is a horrible human being. And why is he saying that to him? Why is he is there so many layers to him that he really can feel sympathetic when something bad and tragic happens in somebody's life, or is this just yet another way that he can make his narrative get pushed forward? I don't know. But for that mere fact that Robert De Niro plays it as if he is the favorite uncle who's got the good candy in the left pocket and the bad candy in the right pocket, and when he likes you, he gives you the left candy pocket. If he doesn't like you, if you're his niece and nephew, he gives you the licorice kind. Ugh. And, and you still feel not empathetic, but you feel like you could be in the same room as this guy, even when he's going through the trial at the end, even when all this stuff is happening. You start to solidify your opinion about him, or at least I did, about him way quicker than I did about Leo, and being like, that guy's just a bad guy. He's just bad. He's inhuman, sociopathic. And so for that reason, and it's interesting because Robert Downey Jr., speaking of Oppenheimer again, he's sort of becoming the front runner, deservedly so, in my opinion. It'd be neat to see Robert De Niro and Robert Downey Jr. going neck to neck, and nobody really sure who's going to win until Oscar night. And then Ryan Gosling wins for Barbie.
Oh,
yeah,
I know that's the consensus. He's gonna get a nomination.
I believe I was one of the first. Just
you said no, you said it.
No, I believe he will. But anyway, so the point to all of that is the way that the screenplay is written and the way that the quality of the film, that could be this epic over the top film, and it's not. It's about human issues and how we deal with, one, day-to-day life in that time, and two, and I'm going to make a general, very idealistic statement, but I'm going to say it anyway. I can't believe that people are willing to ruin people's lives, literally murder people over money, get a job, like go to work.
You know what's funny is that the King Hale character did work so hard. It's interesting how, people work really hard not to work. Like, they try to figure out ways to not have to go to work.
Yeah.
But they spend a lot of time and a lot of energy trying to figure out how to get around the system or game the system. Well, that's essentially what he learned Osage. Like the guy, King Hale, like the character, learned Osage and was able to converse with them and was a part of their community for the sole purpose of, behind their backs, coordinating all of these murders to be able to get money on the side for all of from all these people's head rights. So I mean, and it's in the trailer. I mean, it's in it, and it's also the kind of his whole these people don't deserve this money. They lucked into it, so it's not. And multiple characters in the film, the coroner or the funeral parlor guy who's taking all the jewelry from all of the Osage women who he's buried over time and then selling it. I mean, all of that. It's essentially their view is it's not their money anyway, because they were just given it for no reason. And it's so ironic because it's kind of well, wait a second.
It's called an inheritance.
But also they were living on other, I mean, they even bring it up, the Osage started in the Missouri, Kansas area, and then were forced to relocate. Now they were smart enough to buy the land that they were relocated to, which means they had all the mineral rights. Everything below them, the land that they owned, was theirs. So that was, that's why all this stuff started. But all of the white people were kind of wait a second, that doesn't make sense. They can't just move into a place and then make a bunch of money from all of the oil that's underneath the land that we forced them to move to. So it's just it's so
you just
roll your eyes.
Mind-boggling that money is so. I mean, the cliche is root of all evil. Okay, sure, but. Okay, I said sociopathic. So you would have to be sociopathic in order to not go. How do you sleep?
Well, no, it's because they don't think that the Osage Indian people are this on the same level as white people. That's it. I mean, it's white supremacy. They don't see it as the same level. You know, it'd be like me, you know, eating chicken. You know, like I don't equate a chicken with the same level as me. So that's how they are interacting with these people is in an inhumane way, because they don't consider them human to a large extent.
Yeah, but the pure definition of sociopathic is lacks empathy towards other human beings, cannot feel what other human beings are feeling. And when I was talking about what Robert De Niro was doing in the jail at the end, is he truly sympathetic to that moment, or is he just saying that because once again he's manipulating something so he can get something later on? Sociopathic. And it is mind.
He's trying to get Ernest back on his side.
Sure.
Essentially.
Sure. And the screenplay is so well written. And I'm not saying Robert De Niro had it any easier than anybody else, but the beats are very clear, or at least he makes them very clear as an audience watcher. I don't know if I read it, I would see the same thing. I don't know about that, because my mind thinks differently after I see a film. I start to break it down. Like, what did that look like on the page? What would that be like to deliver that line? What line reading? What intention would I come up with that? But he's so crystal clear with his intentions, and the fact that it's layered with this hidden personality trait is phenomenal. It is phenomenal. And yes, I understand exactly what you're saying, that they don't think the Osage Nation deserves or are worthy. And that's an interesting way to put it. Isn't that what he talks about in the beginning of Inglourious Bastards? Isn't that what Christoph Waltz says, that, you know, like, if this person is lower than me because I think they're like a rat, I'm not going to try to communicate or feel sympathetic to a rat, especially if it's getting into my food, especially if it's bothering me and blah, blah, blah. But the mindset for that is hard for me to comprehend on so many levels. Thank goodness. But, and I'm glad that there are movies out there that put my thoughts and my consciousness in that frame of mind for 3.5 hours, so I can understand that there is a lot of injustice and evil in this world, and how I am grateful that I am trying to be a better person or a good person. I'm trying. There are days where I'm like, I'm giving up. But most of the days I'm like, okay, this is the right thing to do. Be kind, blah, 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 without sounding too cheesy. It's just, it's like, build a business, dude. You have a business. You're a funeral director. You're making $600 or whatever it was on that thing that they were arguing back and forth, and you charge them this, then you charge them this, and blah, 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 blah. And I understand that the way that capitalism works, that some people, that doesn't trickle down, and people have to survive. So people do desperate things in desperate times, thus the grave robbing and all that other stuff, even though he explicitly says, please don't steal from this coffin this time, but they do anyway. But, you know, Leo's in the beginning of the film, he's a petty thief in the beginning of the film. It's like, get a job, dude. Go and get a job. I've never had anything I've wanted. Soapbox, idealistic living, but I've never had anything in my life that has possessed me to want it so much that I'm willing to hurt somebody else to get it.
Yeah, well, I mean, we also live in a we also live in a different. No, we don't. Time. Well, hold on. We also live in a different time where there are options open to us without us having to move, where we can try different things, and we're open to different jobs, versus like, you know, you're wherever you are, and there may be limited things. I'm not excusing any of the actions that anybody said. But what I'm saying is that, like, it's not a 1-for-1, like, you know, I don't know why they don't just go to the Biscuitville and get a job.
Yeah,
you know,
I know what
like,
you're saying.
Yeah, they didn't have a Biscuitville.
Yeah, I gotcha. So. I love Biscuitville, by the way. Yeah, you're right.
Actually, Hardee's has better biscuits than Biscuitville, but
I can't believe you just said that. I would have to totally agree. I agree. But my point that I was making, as soapbox-ish as it is that then when you're coming onto somebody else's land and you're coming into somebody else's world, then you have to adapt to what their need of you is. Not,
Yeah.
I'm going to force my way through it and bury you and burn you down to make money because I can't make money any other way because the only job you have is for me to clean out the barn.
Yeah.
Clean out the barn. Shut up. Anyway.
Well, I mean, and in a lot of ways, I mean, there were white servants of Osage Nation people that we did see in the movie even. So,
see?
I mean, there were people.
And I bet you they didn't kill anybody.
Well, there you go. And Leonardo DiCaprio, I mean, he started off as a driver for multiple Osage Nation people, but that's how he met Molly. So,
and strangely enough, I was thinking about that later on after I saw the film, like 2 or 3 days later, and I was thinking he seemed happier then when he's driving that car and driving her around as a regular client, and because they're crushing on each other, but he seemed happier in that job than he ever does for the rest of the film. So.
Yeah. Yeah, he's essentially miserable and drunk for the rest of the film.
Well, wouldn't you be if you were doing the things he was doing?
So that's probably how he got through it, I guess. But geez, like
And speaking of which, to tap into something you said earlier, why are they together? Why is she with him? Why is he with her? Sometimes relationships and love, it's complicated and it's messy. And on a base level, they can love each other, but people love each other, but still do awful things to each other all the time. And I'm not necessarily meaning trying to poison somebody, but cheating on somebody or lying to them about something or spending too much money or whatever the smaller of the evils are that you would lie to your significant other about. But they were definitely, and they had chemistry. Leo and Lily, they had chemistry. It was her chemistry, and he just floated in it. I'll be honest with you, because I am taken by her. But relationships are complicated, and why people stay in love with people. People fall in love, and they stay in love with people that are bad for them all the time. They can't be with that person. They shouldn't be with that person, but that doesn't mean that love is ever going to go away. It's complicated being a human being. Relationships are complicated, and it's near to impossible to always be your best self in them. And I'm not excusing any behavior that he does, because he develops into what's that Munchausen by proxy, where your loved one is trying to kill you. At the same time, they're trying to act like they're taking care of you.
Yeah.
And so that's a psychological characteristic or trait. I don't know what you call that. Disease. And
but it's like he's trying to convince himself at the same time that he's trying to convince her that he's taking care of her.
That's why he takes a sip of that stuff.
Yeah.
See, that's
obviously.
Oh, it's such smart such smart screenwriting, though. It's so smart because that's exactly what a human being would do in that situation. They would want to know because he was feeling guilty. And so when they did that, I was like, that is so smart. And I don't know the difference between the book, going back to your original topic, but I do know that the book was more of a true crime type of story.
It was. Yeah.
From
will
Jesse
say,
Plemons' character's point of view.
That's who Leonardo DiCaprio was supposed to play, that character, Jesse Plemons' character. He was supposed to play the FBI agent.
And then they rewrote it.
Yes. So I do want to finish the whole Molly Ernest thing though, real quick before we talk about that. So I think there's kind of like a pair of quick scenes that match up really well, and one is when Ernest drinks a little bit of the poison after he gives her the poison or after he puts it in her insulin, and then the other one is when they're kind of like she's all sweaty in bed and he's kind of holding her and she's really really low. And she kind of leans over and she just whispers in his ear, "You're next."
Yeah.
And that is, it's both characters are like, all the cards are on the table to the audience. So, we know that he knows what he's doing and we know that she knows what he's doing. And yet they're still embracing each other in this bed. And it's like, there's a lot of layers, but just the fact that like it was an interesting line reading because It's like the You're Next, it kind of sounded a little bit, like it was a warning, but was it a vengeful type warning, or was it a kind of like, you don't know what you've gotten yourself into, because even though you think that this is the end, it's not the end, because they're going to come after you once they're done with me. Because that's how it's been with this family and with this whole thing the whole time we've been watching it. So, and yeah, so that whole, those two scenes to me were a good pairing of economic screenwriting and great acting to allow two words and a small action to play out everything for us. So in a 3.5 hour long movie, it's like 10 seconds worth of screen time, and they're able to get it done. So that's pretty cool.
I thought it was about karma. She was saying, no matter what is happening to me now, whatever you are doing will come back to you. You're next. Yeah. All this bad stuff is coming your way. And that's just the way it's going to have to be. Amazing.
So yeah, the book versus the movie. Yes, it was kind of like a half and half. It was talking a lot about the formation of the FBI and J. Edgar Hoover and all of that. And then this was the first big case of the FBI that was assigned to the FBI by the president, by Coolidge, I think. So so that's and then it's kind of like, this guy was the Tom, whatever his name was, what was a
Tom White.
Tom White, yeah, was a Texas Ranger who was then brought into this like fledgling bureau that was, like he said, it wasn't even called the FBI. It was just called the Bureau of Investigation. That was all they called it. So but yeah, this was their first big thing, and they did have a group of people, but it was essentially led by Tom White, and so it was kind of like a whodunit, I guess. Like, we're gonna figure out these murders, but then when COVID happened, they kind of like they were supposed to do this before Irishman, and then for various reasons, I guess. I did listen to a couple of interviews and read some articles with Martin Scorsese, and for whatever reason, they needed to make The Irishman first. I don't know why. I'm not really sure. I don't know if it had anything to do with getting a whole bunch of old guys together to do a movie when they could. And so they did that. But when they started ramping up Killers of the Flower Moon again, there was kind of they were in this weird stasis where they couldn't really figure out how to crack it from a narrative standpoint and figure out like what the core of the story was. And once Scorsese started meeting with the Osage people, and he got to the point where he was like, if I'm going to make this movie, I don't want to make Stagecoach. I don't want to make not Shane. What was the other movie that we talked about? We talked about Shane and The Searchers. He's like, I don't want to make Stagecoach. I don't want to make The Searchers, even though he's a huge John Ford fan and he loves Westerns. But that's not the movie that he wants to make. He doesn't want to make something where the Osage Indians are an element to the film. He wanted to make it to where they were the center of the film, and this situation was the focus of the film. And then how did they get in from there? And it was this relationship between Molly and Ernest Burkhart that they focused on. And at that point, Leonardo DiCaprio was like, this is the story. And he's like, there's no way I'm playing this Texas Ranger dude. He's like, I'm going to play the, Ernest Burkhart guy, which he was, and same thing with like Robert De Niro, the character that he played, or the guy that he played was like 45 when a lot of this stuff was going on, but Robert De Niro's 80 or something, so it's a totally different kind of a setup, but still the character and the real person was still there, and these were all real people. They've just obviously taken license with particular elements of their life, but the family and the murders of the people in this family are all real. So and then that kind of like the beginning, there was some footage, I think, that was shot of the Osage people with all of their, opulence and wealth, but they reshot a lot of that stuff with special film cameras that Martin Scorsese had been gifted over his life of being a filmmaker. He had this like 16 millimeter film camera that was from the 1920s that they used to recreate a lot of that stuff. And so, I mean, it's like, why not? You know, like, you know, you got it, you might as well use it. But
Look what he got. You know?
yeah, no, it looked great. That whole beginning was really good. And we don't see that very, I mean, there were not any needle drops, obviously, but having that, no voiceover, and dialogue less, just like setting of the table of, you know, you've got the kind of like, they bury the peace pipe, not peace pipe, they bury the pipe, whatever that is. I don't know exactly what that represents to the Osage people, but it was a big deal that at the very beginning of the movie where they have that, oh, and all the little kids are looking from the outside looking in. I'll talk about that in a second, but then they go right into that, you know, that kind of like very drum heavy music, which the score was written by Robbie Robertson, who just passed away. So yeah, that score, over all those images, it does kind of set the table for, this is what Leonardo DiCaprio's character is walking into, boomtown type scenario. So it was a quick and great way to get into the story. I thought that was awesome. But
I don't know what the pipe meant either, but what I took from it was that the Osage people valued things that we would have that the people who lived and came into their land didn't understand the value of. That the value of a pipe was mourned as strongly as a human being, because a couple of those ladies are really like wailing. And I just thought it shows the value of certain things in certain cultures that the people like Robert De Niro and Leonardo DiCaprio's character would have no concept to value that. That's one more soapbox thing, where when you come into another person's land, you should at least try to adapt to what they are doing first. I don't get how you just come in and barrel through. I will tell you this, there is a controversy brewing with this film now, and I just saw something on film Twitter today about how the Osage people are some of the Osage people and some of the people in the community are not happy with this film. They think it's manipulative. They think it's it degrades the people who actually lost their lives, and that it's sort of a showy way, and that they're using the murders to actually tell this white guy's story. And I've heard people go as far as saying this was the green book of this Osage experience. Now, I thought about it and I thought, well, do we talk about that? Do we tap into it? Not saying we shouldn't, but here's what's interesting to me. I will now go down rabbit holes and research and start looking things up and start understanding things about the Osage people that I would have never have thought about before. And that goes for all movies that I see. So all I would say about this controversy is that I can only talk about the film that was presented to me. I can't talk about anything other than that. Now, if it affects people a certain way, it helps me broaden my perception of this film and understanding it from how other people might see it, people who have a closer connection to it than I do. But at the same time, all I can talk about is what I've seen. So if we focus on the narrative of the movie, that's one thing. If we had a whole nother podcast about how films sometimes, and they call it whitewashing, and there's a lot of terms for it, it's hard for me to see that unless somebody points that out, because that's not my natural disposition. And that's because of the way that I was raised in the world that I was raised in. But I want people to know that you and I are both clearly open-minded about understanding something from a different point of view. So if I misspeak or I misinterpret or it's being misinterpreted what I'm saying, I'm at least willing to go, okay, so then tell me why I misspoke, or tell me what I need to know so I can understand it better. Maybe I never will be able to understand it fully, but I'm at least willing to say, hey, shut up, let's listen. So I just want to make that clear, because I feel like you can be we've talked about this before. Two guys talking about the Barbie movie, two guys talking about whatever, the two white guys talking about this, the two Caucasian guys talking about this. And I respect and validate that. But at the same time, I need people to understand. And I think we make it pretty clear that I am willing to listen to what other people are saying. And I did with Green Book. I've done with other movies that have caused controversy. And I can actually turn around and say, I see what they're saying. I did not have a concept of that, but now I see it. So anyway.
Yeah. Well, I will just say this. I know that Martin Scorsese and the production of the film worked with the chief standing bearer of the Osage Nation. I know that they worked together, and I even heard an interview with Chief Standing Bear, and he seemed to be happy with the fact that they shot on Osage land, that they utilized the culture. They depicted the culture of the Osage people. But I mean, I'm sure that there's people out there who don't like it. But yeah, that's people in the Osage Nation that don't like it. But yeah, you're not going to make everybody happy. Period. That's just bar none. Not going to happen. So but yeah, I think that it was an interesting turn for them to go from centered on the FBI agent to centered on a relationship between a white person and someone who is in the Osage Nation. So I mean, it's a lot harder row to hoe, but I think that I think that Scorsese and his whole production crew did a really good job. And so yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, I agree with you. I agree. Yeah. I think it's smart that they went with the relationship because it's so complex and the issues are so layered. You see all of the issues that her life has presented, all of the issues that his life has presented, and putting them together helps it focus on the fact that if it was just a murder mystery, some form of emotional connection might have gotten lost. And it sounds, I don't know the book. It sounds like that would fall into that other category that we were just talking about. That sounds like it would be less personal and maybe a little bit less focused on the Osage people the way that this film does, and the way that this film presents the layers and the complexities of their lives. Even if here's what I loved about the screenplay. It felt like I was reading a book. And now I know the book's different, that you've spoken about that, but the moment when the one daughter who likes to party, Anna, I believe, I believe it's Anna, when she comes home and she gets in the bed with the mom, and the mom's like, "You're my favorite," basically is what she says. That reads to me like 1/3 of a chapter of a book. Those are the small details in a book that we don't often get in movies. And whether or not it was important to push the narrative forward or not, I don't know if it was. Maybe for Anna's, the sympathy that is elicited when you find out what happens to Anna, or maybe some deep character flaws in the mother, or deep character ridges with the daughters. I don't know. But the bottom line is that those are the small details that make a screenplay interesting to me. It's not just about the partying daughter who has a tragedy happen to her. We know that somebody in her life loves her more than mostly everybody else. And that's a character level and a character trait. And they're just layered upon layer upon layer with these characters in this movie, even the ones that you barely see. Even the small characters that come and go, there are layers to them. That the diabetes thing, the alcoholic thing, the gambling thing, all of those, movies are about conflicts. So, we're not going to see a bunch of happy people running around in a film going, "Yeah, we're so happy we live in utopia" for 3.5 hours. It's about the complexities of being a human that make the film interesting. And I think there's layer after layer in this film.
Yeah. I mean, we didn't even talk about this is a rated R movie, and we didn't talk about the extreme violence in the film, but it's so clinical and it's so just unflinching. And I mean, that I think it is, but I mean, yes, it's on brand, I guess, for Scorsese, but the camera doesn't shy away from it. It doesn't give you an out. It doesn't allow you to just say like, "Oh, well, maybe that stuff happened, but it probably wasn't that bad." No, it was brutal. It was horrible.
I thought about that when you see the scene of them lifting the body off the rocks and her head, what happens with the back of her head. I thought to myself, some people might say that's gratuitous and that's gory and too graphic and unnecessary. I disagree. What it did for me is it made my emotions open to her as a character, because you had to see how tragic that was and the reality of it, because it's, I don't even know what the word I was going to say. Disgusting.
It's brutal.
It's brutal, but you needed to see it because you needed to understand that somebody who's a human being did this to another human being for money. And when you see the graphic nature of that scene, your emotions are charged on a whole bunch of different levels. And it just strikes you, and it brings it home that this is not a human being who this happened to, all over somebody doing something for money.
Yeah. So how did you like the ending? It was a little weird for me.
Loved it.
The radio show thing. I got real geeky about the radio show, like the character essentially that you played in the play that we saw you in at Really Little
Sound
Theater.
Op, yeah.
Yeah, Sound Op, yeah. But you know, the guy who's there like writing on a piece of paper and
I love
then,
it.
you know, like pouring a drink and like
yeah.
Yes. Oh my gosh. So I thought that was really cool. And then of course, like seeing Jack White, I was like, hey, it's Jack White.
Good for
Come
him.
on. So yeah, and he didn't get in the way. Like he did okay.
When he first shows up, you're like, oh, Jack White.
Wait a second.
And then he does 3 or 4 different characters and different voices, and he does them well. And and if anything, Scorsese's more of a distraction.
That's what I wanted to get to.
Loved it.
Why did he feel like he needed?
Because it's his movie.
Okay. And I understand that Scorsese, it's not like unprecedented for him to be in his movies. Like he has an amazing scene in Taxi Driver. It just, pivotal too. I mean, like that's one of the most important scenes in that movie. And I just watched After Hours. He has like a very, very small scene in there. Yeah. That movie, oof, I'm telling you, I did not know about that movie until I came across it and I was like, okay, I can get on board with this. Even though I know it's like whatever you want to say, lesser Scorsese that a lot of people say, but I love the vibe of it. It's just like, it's so frenetic. It's amazing. And it's very 80s. It's very New York, very 80s, but it's cool though.
Well, my history of Scorsese is strange because, technically speaking, Raging Bull should have been one of the first. Taxi Driver should have been one of the first. But I think I saw Taxi Driver and then After Hours. And I was like, this guy is something. Like, he made these 2 films? What? Like, these are not even close. Which one does not go with the other? So I have an affection for After Hours. And I don't understand why people, when somebody has done such great work, why somebody has to pull out something that they've done and say it's less than. No, it is what it is for what it is, and that's the film he wanted to make. And if you leave out the fact that it's made by Scorsese, meaning that mindset of Raging Bull and all the other things that we know about him, that's an unfair comparison. So that says that if you make like chocolate ice cream your whole life and then all of a sudden you make vanilla ice cream and it's super good vanilla ice cream, it will never be as good as the chocolate. That's dumb. I'm sorry. I have a little attitude tonight.
Well,
shut up.
No, I mean, for me though, like I watched that, and then just this last weekend I watched The Trial, Orson Welles movie, The Trial, which is based on a Franz Kafka like story, and so that movie was super trippy too, but it totally reminded me of After Hours. I was just like, it's the same. It's like a guy who's kind of like being pushed from thing to thing, and you never really know where you're at, and he's being accused of things you don't even know what he's being accused of, and it's the same movie. I mean, in a lot of ways, it's just we're just being banged around with the main character from set piece to set piece, and so it felt I got the same feeling from both of them, which is tense. Like you're just tense the whole time, like immediately, especially in The Trial. It's just like right off the bat, and it's Anthony Perkins is the main character in the film, and so he already just gets me really tense, like just his kind of like affectations and all the movies that I've seen him in, Murder on the Orient Express. He's just a nervous person. The Trial has a scene in it where there's a bunch of kids looking through these slats in the wood, and so that's what reminded me of that first scene in Killers of the Flower Moon. And then Scorsese talked about that movie. Today I listened to an interview where he talked about the trial and about that scene and about how that informed his shooting that scene at the beginning of the film. So it's like, of course, he's just like a font of film knowledge, and he just eats all that up and then is able to, I wouldn't say it was an homage necessarily. I mean, I guess you could call it an homage, but at the same time, it's like he knew what those kids looking, their eyes looking through those slats meant in that particular scene. And he wanted a similar feeling for this scene, something that you're not supposed to be able to see, but you're seeing it, and that's what those kids at the beginning of Killers of the Flower Moon were going through. They're like, what is this big important thing that these people are doing in here? We don't even know what's going on. And that's what he got. So,
well, I love that I guess the leader, I'm not sure, or the person conducting the ceremony, he goes, and to all the children listening outside. I love that he was like smart enough to know they're all listening. So anyway, let's get back to Scorsese at the end of the film, because I knew that was going to be, that's now become like a thing, and Brendan Fraser's performance has become a thing. And we could tap.
It was big.
Well, I thought about this after the film. I think he had an unfair advantage where he had no scene before and no real scene after to explain that character choice. So that's how I feel about that. And I'm not.
Wait, an unfair disadvantage?
What did I say? Advantage.
You said advantage. Okay.
Advantage.
So it was tough for him because he made a choice.
No.
And he wasn't able to flesh it out.
It was tough for us to understand that choice because we didn't see him before or really after. We didn't know that this guy had that in him. And then all of a sudden there's this epic court thing happening, and he just out of nowhere is, on 11. And we don't understand that. So I don't know if it's a bad acting choice, and I don't know if the actor should have been able to put that into it so we would understand that this is how this guy was and blah, 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 blah. He's at a disadvantage, in my opinion. There should have been a scene where he was sitting at a table, and I'm not saying that I'm going to rewrite this screenplay, but for people to understand what he was doing, I would venture to guess that there's a scene missing that maybe was there before and they just took it out for, I can't imagine time, but it's not a necessity to know anything about that character per se, but it was a little over the top and a little jarring for most people. So back to Scorsese at the end of the film. Nothing he did. I kept thinking to myself, if I didn't know who he was, would it have triggered anything? And no, it wouldn't have. It would have just been another person doing the show.
Why was he replaced? Why was the narrator replaced? Why not start with him as the narrator?
Because the point of the story that they were telling was being told by this last actor, by this last voiceover person. And the moral of the story is this. That's like saying, okay, so the narrator also has to do all of the sounds and then has to do all of the voices. And then they had other actors doing all these other characters. So why not at the end of the story, Deus Ex Machina, when the basket of the gods come in and solve the whole problem in a Greek play, you never seen that god before, but he just descends down in a basket and he's like, this is solved, and this is solved. You don't think to yourself, why did they get a whole nother character? He needed to come in and solve it. So he's just coming in and reading this is the moral of the story part of the story. And so I think it would not have dawned on us one way or another if it was an unknown actor doing both parts, doing the main narration and then the last narration. And we probably would have gotten all of that if it wasn't for the fact that people know who Martin Scorsese is and know what he looks like and knows what he sounds like. And on top of all that, he's a master, and he's just created this masterpiece again, and he is up there in age. So how many more times are we going to be able to see Martin Scorsese on film? And I'm not saying anybody should do anything. People are motivated by death every day. I'm saying that he's probably not, but the question comes down to not why, but why not? Why not him? Why not him in his own film? Why not have him have the moral of the story is this? And here's why it completely worked for me, because the last image of the film is so beautiful and so devastating and so just unique. When that camera pulls away and you realize it's a flower, I was like, did you realize it was a flower?
No, I was just thinking about the drone.
I'm
I was thinking it's a drone shot, which he hadn't used. Like he hadn't moved the camera like that before, because to me, that told me this is present day. This is not back then.
That's
so
like at the end of The Last Temptation of Christ. Have you ever seen that movie?
A long time ago.
At the very end of it, there is like the shutter of lights, and then you actually see a film strip go across and kind of in shadows. And I was like, what the hell was that supposed to mean? And one of my directing teachers he was letting you know, this is just a movie. It's just a movie. And I was like, oh, that's good.
It's a story.
That's good.
Well, actually, what it reminded me of was the end of Schindler's List, where it's like all of the things that happened before in this story that we told that was based on true life are still affecting the people today. And that, with all the Jewish ancestors putting rocks on the graves. And same thing here, the Osage Nation still lives on, and there are still descendants of the people that were in this story that was told about, but those people are still affected. I mean, they're still here and they're still carrying on their traditions, but they are also still affected. So that's what I got out of.
And when it rises and you realize the inner circle is the inner part of the flower and the rest of
that's so cool.
All that stuff happened and is happening to those people, but look at the beauty that comes out of it. That's what I took from it. I thought it was great.
Oh, that's great.
I thought it was great. I wanted to stand up and go, it's a flower. Does everybody get that it's a flower? Not that, people aren't that smart. And by the way, side note, speaking of the audience that I went, there were quite a few people there, and some of them were younger. Not one person touched their phone the whole entire film, at least not to the point where it distracted anybody else.
Yeah.
I never saw a phone come up and a light go on. I never saw a watch go off. I never saw anything. People sat still and watched that movie. And that is an impressive feat in 2023.
I agree. All right. You got anything else?
No. Best picture, best director, best supporting actor, best actor, best actress, best production design, all the way down the line.
Ooh, production design. Ooh, yeah.
Best costume, best
score was good too.
Yeah, best score. And they're all going to get nominated. And watch out, because everybody's talking about Oppenheimer. And okay, that's cool. Let's have that part of the conversation. But this could be the one that 20 years from now, if and when it does win, people went, yeah, that's the one that should have won. Oppenheimer was great, but this is the film of this year.
That's where Scorsese lives, though. I mean, when you look at it, look at 1980 and look at Raging Bull. I mean, you look at all of those movies. Was it 76 and Rocky instead of Taxi Driver?
Correct.
Yeah, I mean, so it's that kind of stuff.
Ordinary People and Raging Bull. See, I have a discussion. I feel differently. I think the film that won should have won.
Yeah, or Goodfellas and Dances with Wolves.
I think the film that won should have won.
Yeah.
I mean, we can look back at it in time, and one has grown and one has stayed static, and I get that. But at the time, the film that won should have won. But we can go into that because I have a lot of controversial opinions about the Oscars.
Well, but I mean, for me at least, like my favorite filmmakers have like one or two Oscars to their name. Like the whole group of them: PTA, David Fincher, Kubrick, and Martin Scorsese. Like they've literally, there's two Oscars in that whole group of people. So I mean, it's just like, that's fine. I still have all their movies.
There's some part of my brain that knows it's not as significant as my heart tells me it is, but it still doesn't stop me from celebrating this film through those nominations. And if and when it does win, I will celebrate this film and the experience I had when they celebrated it on Oscar night. That's it for me.
All right. Cool. All right. Well, you can check us out on the web at actorandengineer.com. You can go to facebook.com/actorandengineer. And you can check us out on YouTube. Just search for the Actor and the Engineer podcast. And we'll see you next time.